Talking about growth, Kenya has been on an ambitious campaign to try and improve technology, and this has seen a number of countries team up with Kenya. That includes Germany. And I want to bring in the Managing Director for Centurion, who is Dr. Kevit Desai. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And looking at where we are as an economy, there's a renaissance of sorts where Kenya wants to be industrialized so that we can compete with other global players. And this has seen a lot of technology transfer between the big multinationals and local companies. Just walk us through where we are as a nation.
Well, I think that, as you rightly put, Kenya now needs to consolidate its gains today in terms of its doing business indicators, its profound commitment towards infrastructure, its commitment to certain sectors and so on. And now, in order to consolidate all those gains and to really put it on a transformative path, we need to promote technology. We need to promote technology transfer. We have, to date, always had a legacy of buying technology and using it for production and process enhancement. But we've never really gone further in order to build a capacity internally to enhance it and to promote greater capacity so that it's able to enhance productivity and innovation within the manufacturing sector. So therein lies, one of the biggest steps that we could take today. In fact, recently an initiative has been launched by the German Mechanical Engineering Association, one of the largest. It's called VDMA.
Yes.
And has promoted a partnership of 3,000 manufacturing organizations to date within the European context, and is a world leader in creating a platform which ensures German competitiveness in the manufacturing industry. And they had recently partnered with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers and Centurion Systems Limited to extend this platform. And what this means is that we'd be able to now, for the first time, be able to have a greater say in establishing what our context is as far as our needs of productivity, innovation, efficiency into German manufacturers of machinery, which would in turn be able to supply more appropriate technologies. Appropriate technologies is one of the largest concerns in the agricultural sector, especially when it comes to processing and value addition. It's a concern because we need to increasingly ensure that machinery is more appropriate to the needs of productivity and innovation within industry.
Talking about innovation and technology transfer, the country hasn't been doing well on this front, really, because if you look at the current status quo, is that it's not a win-win kind of arrangement. How do we make sure this is properly structured and when we allow these multinationals to come and have operations here in the country in the name of technology transfer?
You're right. Even if you look at one sector, like the agricultural sector, we see that the potential is phenomenal. With proper processing capacity, we could yield approximately 30 billion to our existing incomes on a yearly basis, but we could also enhance, and currently, while it contributes significantly to our GDP, we could, contributes greatly to workforce and labor movements by way of promoting almost 75% of our labor workforce in agriculture. The challenge, as you said, is that how is it with all this capacity that we are only able to export 17% of processed agricultural produce. And so that now links to aspects of how we negotiate platforms which have a key inclusion in terms of the sustainability of machinery, the transformation of machines within our industrial sector. And what it calls for is to engage platforms that would help us promote technology transfer, which would mean transferring skills on how to repair equipment, maintain systems, look at aspects of being able to foretell failures, being able to upgrade existing technologies. One of our bigger concerns in the agricultural sector is how do we promote efficiency, like energy efficiency? Well, you can only promote energy efficiency if you're able to advance technology, if you're able to calibrate it properly, if you're able to maintain it.
Yes.
And so this transfer helps. It helps directly with some of the key concerns within the transformation of sectors like agriculture and other sectors of the economy.
Mm-hmm. And what's the bigger picture looking like in the event that we have all this technology coming to Kenya and local companies like yours being able to team up with these multinationals? Where should we see perhaps the skills gap in the next 5 years? Should we still be talking about a skills gap, or will have sort of achieved this ratio to ensure that our young people are also trained using various modes through the academies?
Yes, so specific structures and frameworks have to be put in place, because we're not looking at one particular manufacturer, we're consolidating it on a sector basis, like the agricultural sector. And what needs to happen is transfer has to take place in terms of occupational standards, which are internationally benchmarked in terms of productivity gains, innovation gains, efficiency gains. These in turn need to be turned into curriculums and nationally be linked to our national system of 260 vocational institutions and some 65 universities. And the outcome then would be skills and education and research skills, which would then have an impact in terms of the transformation of a sector. So it's crucial that within this cluster and within this partnership that we are now have developed, that the Ministry of Education is also involved, and the Kenya Association of Manufacturers is involved, representing some 3,000 manufacturers, but in particular looking at the agricultural sector, and a local company that could actually then be enjoined in order to build the capacity, in order to greater build capacities of linkages throughout our ecosystem. Mm-hmm. The net gain would be that by being able to play a bigger role in our processing technology, we would even reduce our debt burden. Far too much is being wasted on 100% solutions being delivered to this country, and increasingly we need to make a more
and yet there's local
effort.
capacity to do this.
Absolutely.
Through the polytechnics
and universities.
Sure.
But provided we have a link with the manufacturers. And so these platforms are extremely critical at this particular time as we industrialize, as we enhance our portfolio of infrastructure projects, that we know that we have some sort of self-reliance and some sort of capacity development and an ability to reach out to the blueprint of the technology through skills development, through a closer interaction with organizations which are level playing fields and which are able to share these platforms with Kenyan manufacturers and industrialists.
And Dr. Desai, if I'm a young person listening to this conversation right now, how do they get on board rather than simply at the end of the day saying, these things come, we the young people, the unemployed people, don't get a chance to get part of this?
Well, first of all, it's the inspiration. The fact that nationally we only export 17% of finished agro-produce. So the magnificence of opportunity lies in seeing how they could be entrepreneurs, how they could be involved in further processing technology, how they could be food scientists and technologists within the sector. If you look to South Africa processes 54% of its produce. It's the value addition that has to be the inspiration.
So how do we achieve this? How do we achieve this at the same time our power installed capacity cannot match other economies like South Africa, where they have over 40,000 megawatts installed, whereas Kenya, we are talking about just under 3,000 megawatts.
Yes, and this is a consideration. But if you look at one particular sector, the potential of optimization currently is quite high, because many of our technologies are fairly old within our industrial sector. There are only a few organizations that have really invested heavily in terms of modern systems and technologies and so on. So I think that our competitive lies in also efficiency, the efficient use of resources like energy,
Sure.
and the appropriateness of the technology that we install within industry. This could be a facilitator towards a competitiveness. But of course, by all means, of course, the cost of energy has to go down, and we may have to make extended efforts to look into the entire ecosystem as far as facilitative inputs are concerned. But very little has been done to date in terms of industrial enhancement and productivity gains by making a deliberate step in in addressing aspects of technology, aspects that would yield greater productivity within factories and industries. And a lot has to do with skills. And such an initiative, going back to your question, how does a young person or how does an existing professional benefit from such a scheme and such a cluster? Well, since these standards are being transferred to this country and now going to be institutionalized within our national educational frameworks in time to come, and that they will be accessible to professionals through training programs, then it's up to the individuals to educate themselves and to skill themselves appropriately and to add greater value to their existing jobs or potential opportunities in terms of employment in the future. And so this structure is now accessible not only to young people but to industrialists who would like to gain a lot more in terms of their industrial capacity. And it's looking at very innovative ways of delivery, didactics and in-plant learning based on the German model of excellence. But increasingly it's looking at the entire holistic skills requirement for each sector like agriculture, which includes everything from food safety to aspects of how to design plants, how to maintain plants. And it's applicable and accessible through the entire mainstream of industrialization. It could be useful for a posher mill user, and it could also be extremely useful for productivity gains for a high-end industrialist within the country.
Interesting. Many thanks, Dr. Kevit Desai.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Indeed, Kenya is known as the hotbed of innovations. We hope one day will be the hotbed of technology.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I look forward to that.
Interesting conversation there, just touching on matters to do with technology transfer and